Hey guys, it's Q here, and welcome to YouTube's most underproduced, worst produced Amiga channel on YouTube. I already said that. Hey, I just want to start up my video here showing you can see I have many programs here. Add Pro, which is Art Department Professional, Brilliance, True Brilliance. Scenery Animator, which we already covered and no one watched because they just don't give a crap about an easy-to-use terrain animation software package on the Amiga. Forge, which is a really cool animatable procedural texture generation program. I've done that video. You can find that in the playlist. Toaster, which contains Lightwave, which I have many Lightwave videos and plan on making many more. Then we have VP3, which is Vista Pro 3. That's right, everybody. We're going to make the Vista Pro 3 video. Amiga's most amazing landscape generation software program ever. And with that, let's launch it, shall we? Look at this. Boom. Okay, so Vista Pro. It pops up and it looks like this. And it's very, very, it's imposing. It really is. Compared to Scenery Animator, it actually terrifies me. And it should terrify you, actually. I'm not going to do, like most of my videos, I'm not doing an in-depth every single feature video. I'm trying to get it so that when you're loading up your Amiga, whether it's on a real Amiga or WinUAE or a Pi or, oh my gosh, whatever is out there, and after you've looked at all the cool demos and video games, and then you see some posts or hear about how Amiga did really cool graphics, you might fire up some graphics programs. And Vista Pro is one of those graphics programs way back in the day where people that like the Star Trek movies, specifically Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and the whole Genesis planet fly-through thing, which was like one of the first CGI flying over an Earth-like thing on film. No, that was not Vista Pro, that was not an Amiga, that was something way more expensive. But this is the kind of program that got people excited to be able to do that kind of thing on their Amiga. So here we are, and what I'm going to do is just give you a basic overview of how this system works. So at least you can fire it up, get a rough idea of how it works, and then from there you can do your own exploration and figure out what other things do. Because that's all the fun. And if I just showed you everything, then there'd be nothing left for you to do, and you'd be like, okay, that's like Vista Pro. Which for me, that happens a lot when I watch people play games on the Amiga, like the long plays. I'm like, oh, that's how you get through Rocket Ranger. Well, I guess I don't need to play it now. So what I'm going to do is the first thing we're going to do is go up to load. This is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to go load a Vista DEM. DEM is a digital elevation model. And that is basically a bunch of math that creates terrain or an image of mountains, to use another term. Let's go do that. We're going to load up. Let's see, let's load up my favorite because it's so pretty. Let's load up. So you see this MSHA and this MSHB. That's Mount St. Helens after it exploded back in, I think it was like 1981 or something. Mount St. Helens before it exploded, hence the B. I did B, I think, in the demo image I put on the Commodore Amiga Facebook group, which you should all be members of, and please go there and check it out. Let's do after. This is after it blew its top, and unfortunately a lot of people died. A lot of animals died, and a lot of trees died. But let's do this one because it might look different from what I've shown before. I also want to apologize. I am using an Amiga 1200 with the 68060 TF1260. That's not my apology. My apology is I am using an original, real Amiga mouse, not a USB mouse. I'm using a real, original Amiga mouse. So it likes to stick and hang. And you may see me fumble a bit, or you may hear loud banging sounds in addition to my air conditioning kicking on. Again, this is the YouTube's, most unprofessionally run YouTube Amiga channel. So yes, my audio is terrible, and unfortunately you're going to hear things like that. So that's what I'm explaining. So let's load this DEM up. And look at that. You can see this like U shape, and green and brown. It's like, oh, is this Vista Pro? Is this it? No. So what this is showing you is that white is the highest point and dark green is the lowest point. Technically, blue water could be the lowest point, but dark green is the lowest point. So we get up to you know, these various colors of green, brown, gray, and then we get up to white. And based on the data in this dem, it's been assigned colors that these high peak points are rock, and these lower points are dirt, and these even lower points are grass, green. So that's what VistaPro is doing. So what do you do? Like, you've loaded this up, and you're faced with this, you know, this mess. So the first thing you might do after figuring out, you know, load, you might go down here and just click, I don't know, render. Oh, look, it's doing numbers. I apologize for the color bars. That's my decoder. And you see something that looks like, I don't know, an Atari 7800 game. Yay, Mount St. Helens. I mean, yeah, I can kind of see there's like, I guess the blue stuff is sky, and you know, this is the mountain part, and this is the hole where it blew up, and here's some green grass. Now, keep in mind, as I always say in all my videos, you've got to take your brain and go back in time to the mid 90s, or the early to mid 90s, even the late 80s in some aspects. But honestly, when we started messing with Vista Pro, specifically this version 3.0, we're talking more the early to mid 90s. But this was impressive. Like, if you did this and then actually did an animation like fly around it, your friends would be like, wow, you're super cool, man. You should go to Hollywood and make movies. So there you go. That's what you get. And you get color bars too, which people appreciate. So that's what happens. You load the dem, you hit the render button, and those are the defaults. So if you go up here, you see things like load, save, GR modes, script, IMP, EXP, iQuality. Well, GR modes is graphic modes. Script is, well, it's just script. IMP exp is image export. This is where you choose what you're going to actually be exporting. And iQuality is image quality. Now, you could just go up here and be like, ooh, yeah, I've got a 60 to 60. I'm going to go to Ultra. And then if you do that, it'll take all these settings over here, this mess of things, and it'll do things to them for you. So if you're just like, I want to make sure I have the prettiest mountains ever, you can click Ultra, and it'll try and make the prettiest mountains ever. But, you know, that could take a long time, and it might turn on things you don't really care about. So let's go ahead and say image quality Ultra. Now, keep in your mind or rewind the video to go look at the previous triangle mess that I showed you. We're going to go to Ultra, and you can see it redraws the screen, and it does a bunch of things. And we're going to hit render. Remember how fast it was before. So here you see the numbers doing things, and they're still doing things, and they're still doing things. Clouds, wait a minute. What's going on with this? Still doing things. Oh my goodness, what have we done? What have we done? It's probably what you're asking yourself. Oh, now we're getting to render. Okay, oh, wait a minute. That's going, but why didn't it just show us the picture like it did last time? Oh, it's still rendering, that's why. I just realized I don't have to hum music. I've got mods playing in the background. Yeah, I'm making you guys wait. Of course, you have the power of the internet at your hands, and you can just fast forward the video until you see a picture. But this is what it took. This is on a 1200 with a 6860 running at 50 megahertz. Okay, I just did the preset Ultra, and I want you guys to watch this. And again, I know, you can fast forward. Still sitting here. We're sitting here doing some Vista Pro. We love Vista Pro. Oh my gosh, Vista Pro. Oh my gosh, Vista Pro. Huh, what if I went over here and just clicked abort? Oh look, it aborts. We don't have to wait. So all you guys that fast forwarded and were like, he never showed us an image. Or he did show us an image, but I think I missed some stuff. That's because you cheated, and you shouldn't cheat. You should never read the last page of a mystery novel first. So yeah, we're not going to wait for that. So image quality Ultra is terrible. Don't do that. Let's go back to low. Oh, I just clicked medium. Let's go back to low. Okay, this gets us back to our nice fast happiness. Because I want to explain to you what the settings do so that you don't have to sit there and wait forever. So let's go up to where it says target and camera. So the first thing you want to ask yourself is, how do I take my picture of this mountain? What is this? I mean, I see a crosshair here. What happens if I left click? Okay, I click here. I click here. What I want you to do is, when I say I click here, like I click here, I click here. I want you to pay attention over here. Okay, over here where my mouse is moving. So I'm going to left click here, left click here, left click here. You see those numbers changing? Okay, now I'm going to right click here. Oh, nothing's happening. You don't right click. That's why I just want to let you know. Some people are like, well, what's the right click do? Nothing. We are in what's called target mode. So wherever you click, the camera is going to look towards that dot. Okay. Well, where's the camera? You guessed it. You have to click camera. Okay, we click camera. Now, when we left click, you're like, okay, what does that mean? Well, what's it doing? It's placing where the camera is. Oh, okay. So let's put the camera over, let's put the camera here in some dirt. And then let's click target and tell it to look towards the top of this peak. Well, what am I looking at? I can't tell what I'm looking at. Do I have to hit the render button again? You could do that. You could do render even in low quality mode and see what you're seeing. Or you can click this button that says P, and P stands for preview. Yay! Look at that. We got a preview. So now you can actually see what you just did. So if I turn off preview, oh, by the way, I almost skipped a step. While you're in preview, guess what you can do? You can left click and change the target. Now, this is a great example. I was kind of wondering if this was going to happen right away or later. What happens when you see like these lines, these like blaster lines shooting through here? This is to let you know that you're most likely underground. Your camera is now underground the way you're looking, and you're actually looking through the terrain. That's no good, right? You're like, well, why is it when let's turn off the P now, let's turn off P. Why is it when I left clicked camera, remember you have to always remember go back to camera, when I left click camera to place it, why did it place it underground? Well, it's an approximation, right? This is a lot of math, a lot of data. It's an approximation. So we'll go back, we'll click target, we'll point back towards the peak. We'll go back to P. And so there you go. So what's basically happened is it's putting the camera on the ground, like right on the ground. So yeah, you don't have a lot of flexibility in clicking around with your left mouse button here and seeing anything amazing, because you're like an ant. You're an ant on the ground right now. So what do we do about this? How do we fix this? I suggest staying in this P mode and adjusting the elevation or the up and down of the camera so you can get out of this ant mode. Now how you do that is you have these coordinates here. You have X, Y, and Z. And because this is an engineering-based program, like all engineering-based programs, Z is up and down. So right now we're at 1400, I don't know what VistaPro uses, honestly. I don't know if it's 1400 meters. It probably is. It should be meters if it's DEM data. It could be 1400 feet though. I don't know. So we're going to go in here, and as soon as you click in these little fields here, like when I click in here, it's going to take you out of P mode because it thinks, oh gosh, you're doing something different. So we're going to go in here and we're going to punch in a higher number, like, I don't know, 2000. Type in 2000, click enter, and if you want, without touching anything else, click P. Oh, well, yeah, we're higher because now those lines aren't like right in front of the camera, they're down below us. So we've raised the camera up. So now, if we click around with our left button in this view, we can move around and we don't see those weird lines like jutting across in the blackness up here, right? That's kind of cool. So let's go ahead and let's do a little let's do it. Let's hit the render button now. Apologizing for my mouse again, and apologizing for my color bars again. There you go. So look at that. That pretty much looks like our little preview that we had in the program. That's cool. So that's how you control the camera up and down and move it around. It's, again, I'm doing a very simple thing here, but that's what this whole thing is. You can get kicked off pretty quickly. Camera, you click it, you can place the camera, and as soon as you place it, look at that number. Remember we put 2000, it just changed it to 1300. And then you can click target, and you can say, I want to look over here, and now it looks over there. Or you can go into P mode, and you can left click and look around, which is basically like target. And then I cough. What happens if you right click in here? Nothing. Right click doesn't do anything. All right, let's get out of P mode. We're gonna go ahead and raise this value back up to 2000. Hit enter. Let's hit P mode to verify we're up in the sky again. We are up in the sky again. Now, you might ask yourself, Well, what happens if I click this? Well, now we're in target mode. Let's go to camera mode. And let's click the camera over here. Hey, that number didn't change. Let's click the camera over here. Let's go on top of this peak. Put the camera on top of the peak. Well, that number didn't change, and the camera's way up on top of the mountain. Wait a minute, what happens if I look at that as a preview? I'm inside the mountain. So what the toggle state on does is lock your positioning. So if you're like, look, I want the camera at 2,000 units, keep it there. That's what this toggle state allows you to do. So now if we go to P, since we move the camera back out, you can see you can click freely, and you don't have to worry about your various states being adjusted. Now, what about X and Y? Well, X and Y are exactly that. That's, basically the left and right or up and down, across the grid here, positioning of the camera. So you can get very granular with it. Then you're going to ask me, well, what about all this stuff over here? What's all this? And I'm going to be like, rotation data, I guess? I don't know. I actually don't know what that is. It's probably rotation data. You can see here you've got bank, heading, and pitch, which you can do. And this is, you'll see these values change as well, and you can adjust them. So if you want to obviously in this P mode here, I couldn't bank the camera at all. So if you go in here and you type in, let's like 45 degrees and you go back to P, look at that, we're banked. Yay! Click here, set that back to 0. And if we go back to P, we're no longer banked. Yay! Okay, so that's how that all works, right? That's the amazing system of moving this camera around in a way that you can actually see something and render a pretty picture. Now, pretty picture. It does not look so pretty, does it? No, it does not look really pretty. So one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to go to graphics modes here. We're going to go to graphics panel. And we're going to set some things. It defaults to, I think the most basic Amiga modes. So yeah, low res. It basically identifies whatever workbench is running in. And so my workbench is running in multiscan, so that's what's identified. I'm going to leave it in multiscan for the sake of the capture. I'm going to set it to ham 8. Of course I am, because what do we like here? We like our ham. I'm going to leave it at 640 by 480 because I'm crazy. I'm probably going to have to lower this later on to show you what I'm trying to show you, because this is going to take a little time, even on the mighty TF1260. Click OK. Now, just doing that, all we do is change the resolution and go to ham 8. Let's click render. Boom. Here we go. New palette. And look at that. Okay. I mean, we see some ham fringing, which kind of looks like chromatic aberration, which is neat, but it's a little better, maybe, we guess. Not sure. I don't know. Maybe there's more bands in the sky, Sure. So it still doesn't look great. Let's go back to P mode and let's move it around a bit there. Keep in mind, you notice this P mode is a square. So that doesn't quite line up with what we've selected as our resolution to render the image at. So you're like, hey, that image you just rendered didn't look like what we're seeing here. It looked like it was like a corner of the image. Well, you're not wrong. That's just the difference in resolution versus the preview buffer here. So how do we make this look prettier? You see this button here that says poly? It defaults to 8. And this is, I've really tried to, over the years, I've tried to figure this out. I apologize for that cough again. Is this 8 polygons per pixel? Because if you go to 1, this is the most detail. This gives you the most amount of, what would you say? Most amount of detailed polygons, prettiest looking render, more like what you might expect. Okay, so you've got 8, 4, 2, and 1. I'm not sure what these associate with. I've never had a Vista Pro manual. So if you go down to 1, and all you do is go from 8 to 1, and you click render, watch what happens. Render, render, render. It's taking a little longer. Definitely not as fast. It's going to go, it has to go all the way up to 256. See this number down here? It's got to get all the way up to 256. Generates the palette, and you see the old image, and here's the new image. Whoa, daddy. Okay, something's going on now. This is starting to look like something. Yeah, Sky kind of looks the same. But man, the terrain's starting to look like something. That's starting to look like mountains and snow and grass. That's what this does. Poly. 1 is the most detail. 8 is the least detail. Dither is pretty much what you think it is. It's basically a dithering process to help blend those chunky pixels together. Excuse me, again with the cough. My gosh, this is the cough video. Pix dithering is pixel dithering. You're going to be like, cool, he's going to tell us what this means. You know, I've played with this. I've experimented with it. I've typed in values and I've done renders. I don't see any difference. This may be because I'm in Ham 8 mode. And for those of you that brave full 24-bit mode, this might be something that doesn't work with those modes. This might be for like 8 color, 16 color, 32 color modes. I've never noticed a difference. So that's all I can tell you for now. Below here we see bound, BF, cull, blend, and G shade. BF cull basically is background facing polygons erasing. So polygons that face the camera are rendered. Polygons that don't face the camera are not rendered. This saves memory. This saves render time. It's on by default because it should be on by default. You probably almost never want to turn this off. If you were doing some really crazy animation, then maybe you turn this off. But even then, I don't think you'd want to turn it off. Let's turn on blend. Here we go. By the way, just for the sake of this video and because I've already shown you how good poly level 1 looks, I'm going to go up to poly level 2 just to make it a little faster. So I'm going up to poly level 2, but I've turned on blend. Let's hit render. Here we go. Oh yeah, it's a little faster. Here we go. 256. Oh, it already hit 256. 256. There's the old render and here's the new render. Oh, okay. Things are looking a little, I mean, it's not as detailed as the other one, but now we've got some, instead of like square, chunky green blocks, the blocks of green and brown are blending together. That's what blend does. It blends the texture color data together. Pretty neat. Almost looks like something. It's getting pretty cool. So then we have G shade. Well, what's G shade? Turn it on, click render. Again, wait for this to get up to 256, and then it will be done. That's a good way to gauge how long something's going to take, by the way. Old render, here comes a new render. G shade is turned on. And, oh. So now, the polygons that make up the terrain are blending together the same way the color texture was blending together with the blend mode. So with blend and G shade, which is short for garage shading, it's blending together the little polygons, the little triangles that make up the terrain, and it's making it nice and smooth. So now we're starting to get something that's kind of looking like, you know, a mountain with snow. That's a lot better than what we started with, isn't it? And all you've done is click buttons. You haven't really done anything except click buttons. So that's what that does. Well, let's get to the next feature. We have texture, because they couldn't fit the E. It's texture. It's off by default. We're going to go to M for medium, and as soon as you click it, this happens. You're like, oh my gosh, what is this? Shading altitude. I don't know. Well, here's the deal. What shading does is this is going to add a fractal noise or a mathematical breakup to the coloring that's happening on the terrain to try and make it look more detailed. That's what shading mode does. Altitude does the similar thing, the same thing, probably should have said same thing. It does the same thing, but it also takes into account lighting, angle, or sun direction. It's pretty much bump mapping. So if you're familiar with video game technology or 3D rendering technology, this is bump mapping or altitude mapping. It gives you like a bump map, which makes the terrain look like it has more detail without having to use more of those polygons, those little triangles, to give you the detail. So this is kind of a neat option. It's also, guess what? A slow option. So you may not want to use it for doing your initial test. I actually say you shouldn't use it for doing your initial test because it will slow things down. Let's just do shading and see what that does. So again, we're at poly level 2. I've turned on medium level texturing, which as you saw, well, no, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Turned on blending, which blends the coloring texture together. We've turned on G-shade, which blends those polygons, those triangles together. Now we've turned on texture to see what it does. Let's go ahead and click render. Here we go. Let's get up to 256 again. As you can see, it's going slower because now it's got to calculate the texture. Now this is not the altitude version. This is the shading version. So already you can see there's a little bit of a hit here. So now we're going to see the old render. There it is, new color palette. Makes it look weird. You can also lock the color palette if you're in Ham 8 mode or 24-bit. Not have to see that weird color palette change. So what do you see now? Well, last time we saw like green blended brown to white, but now there's like these dark areas here, these dark texture areas. Yes, that's what it does. It adds like this procedural, this mathematical noise to the terrain to make it look more detailed than it is. So now you're like, come on, show us the other version. Okay, so to show you the other version, you think just click it again? No, you have to turn it off, and you got to turn it back on, and now it'll ask you again. So now we'll go altitude. So let's click altitude, click, and we'll go ahead and click render. He coughs again. This is going to take a little longer. I'm so glad there's music playing in the background that I can't hear, by the way, so enjoy whatever's playing. So as you see here, the render is going to take its time. Some of you are like, why did you make this video if you're just going to keep coughing through it? Well, some guys post videos and they talk about how they screwed up their audio and they didn't have their professional microphone and you have to listen to their camera audio. And they make a whole video that way and they get like 1 million views. I'm going to make this video with me coughing because what do we do on this channel? YouTube's most underproduced Amiga channel. We don't edit. We just run with it. And some of you watch it and some of you don't. So here we go. Here it comes. Ooh, what's going on? Whoa, wait a minute. Ooh, hey, nice. So now you can see what altitude does. It increases the apparent level of detail without increasing the triangles or polygons that make up the terrain. So you're still getting this kind of blotchy, green, patchy stuff, but look at all the detail in here. If you rewind the video, you'll notice before we had kind of, even with the smoothing and the blending, kind of had some like weird triangular, boxy looking things happening here. And this was just before with shading mode, this was just kind of like blotchy, dark areas in the terrain. Now it looks almost like more polygons, more terrain being rendered. And that's what the altitude or the bump mapping version does. And it's pretty cool. It gives you this nice, pretty detailed looking terrain. We've come a long way from that initial load up the terrain, hit the render button, haven't we? We really have. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to leave those modes on because, you know, they're not too slow. Now we're going to go over here and click the clouds button. You know, I'm skipping a lot of buttons, by the way. That might upset you, and I apologize. So we have enable clouds, fractal detail, density, hardness, altitude, cloud size, 1, 2, 4, 8. Cloud size is the same setting as polygon down here. So 1 is the most detailed clouds, 8 is the least detailed clouds. And then you have random clouds, and you can actually convert terrain data to clouds. You could have Mount St. Helens in the sky as clouds using this feature. We're going to leave this at 4 because that's a reasonable amount of clouds. We'll leave the hardness at 50, we'll leave the density at 50, and the altitude at 4,000. We're going to go, enable the clouds, of course, and we're going to enable fractal detail. Why? Because you know what? It just looks cool. This adds, much like the texture option, a little breakup, mathematical breakup of the clouds so they look even more detailed. So go ahead and click that, turn it on, and click the render button. Now here's your cloud pass. By the way, this entire time I've been showing you this, look how many things I've showed you compared to the image quality preset of Ultra, which we never finished. That's why I don't use the presets. So now we're rendering. Got to get up to 256 again, remember. Ooh, it is slow. It is not as fast as it was before. Those clouds are a hit. And remember, we're not even doing the most detailed clouds. We left it at the default of 4. Although I did turn on that texturing option, the fractal detail option. Fractal detail. Take another sip from my drink. Fractal detail. Did I clean the kitchen sink? Almost at 256. Oh, boom. Oh, I just jumped right to it. And enter the clouds. Oh, she's trying. This is Amiga 1200, 68060. She is trying to draw that screen. And remember, all these renders are 640 by 480. This is pretty intense. Now we have those pretty clouds. Oh, happy little clouds. Bob Ross would have been very... Probably, I don't know, he might have been disappointed, actually. I don't know. I think Bob Ross would have dug Vista Pro, and he was actually alive when this program was out. It's a shame that no one ever showed it to him, or at least we were never made aware if anyone ever showed it to him. Andy Warhol got all the credit, that bastard. Anyway, there's your clouds. Looks pretty cool. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn some things off, because I want to show you one more feature before I wrap this video up, because it's getting long. Let's turn the clouds off. Let's turn off our fancy bump map texture shading thing. We're going to keep the polygons at 2, and we'll keep all this blending on. I want to turn on trees. So you click trees, and this comes up. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. Slow down, buddy. Texture. This means the trees actually have tree texture. 2D, 3D. So when you do, it defaults to 3D, and of course it does because those look the best. 3D trees are actual polygon trees, like actual trees in 3D with sides that can accept light and shadow and can be casted shadowed upon and things, like in a video game, trees. 2D is like a card, like an image, like a Hallmark card of a tree that you cut out with scissors and then glue to your table because that's all you could afford to do. Anyway, I'm going to set this to 2D because those are much faster, because 3D trees obviously will take longer because the number 3 is higher than 2, so that must take longer. Grass, guess what? It's grass. And when I say grass, I mean we saw green stuff in the renders before. That's grass. So what is this? This is actual images or shapes of grass. So if you're in 3D mode here, it generates 3D strands of grass like you would see in your yard. That's pretty amazing for the year this program came out in. It's also pretty aggressive, honestly. In the 2D version is the same thing, except they're flat cards, flat 2D polygon cards of grass. I'm going to keep grass off because it adds needless render time, but it's neat that it's there and you can use it. You see here we have oak, pine, palm, cactus. Yes, you can put cactus trees on your Mount St. Helens if you want to. I'm going to stick to pine. I'm going to go ahead and just smash all. I'm going to turn them all on. The default size is 50, the density is 50, and you can put leaves on them. In the case of a pine, it's going to be needles. We're going to leave that off for now for the sake of speed. If you turn this on, you're going to get pine needles on your tree. On your palm trees, you're going to get the palm fronds, and on your cactuses, more needles, and on oaks, you're going to get leaves. If you don't have these on, you're just going to have sticks, which, for the sake of render time, you may want to do that until you figure everything out. And then these are basically the different versions, so you can have just one or one version. I'm going to go ahead and leave the default. I'm going to have all of them turned on to give us some randomness of those trees. It is obviously faster if you don't have them all on. And again, we are doing 2D, not 3D. So with that, what that means visually is that if the sun was shining from the right, you would expect the left side of the tree to be dark. Because these aren't 3D trees, it doesn't know what sunlight is. So the whole tree is just going to be the same color. So you're not going to see a bright side and a dark side to the tree. So that's the difference between 3D and 2D trees, and that's why 2D trees render a lot faster. But I just want to click OK. So when you turn that on, the next thing you want to do is set the tree line. So you click this button, and now you move over here, and wherever you click, this number over here is going to change. This is going to set the altitude at which trees are grown. Now you might think, well, trees should only be in the green. Okay, sure, but this is your world. You can click here on the white. You could have trees growing all the way up to the top of the mountain if you want. Now this little tiny dot here, this is our camera, and this other dot is our target. We know our camera's at 2000, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tell it I want trees all the way up here. That's 1697, so that's still below our camera, but it's pretty high up on this mountain. So we're going to go ahead and click render. Now it's calculating trees. And it's going to take a little longer because it has to calculate trees. And 256, here we come. Yes, please, show me the money. Trees, glorious trees. They're trees. They're trees. Look at that. And see how they look like they're glowing? That's because they're 2D trees. They're little cards, little Hallmark cutout tree cards. Yeah. But it's a quick way to see if things are working. And see how they're different? See how this one's like bright green, this one's like a little darker green, and this one's different. This is like another level. This is because we turned on all 4 tree variants. So you get 4 different trees. If you want more trees, you go back into the tree setting, which you have to turn off, turn back on to get back into it. And when you do that, it does not lose your settings, by the way. As you can see here, it still says texture, still says 2D. So you can increase the density. You can type this number and change it, and you'll get more trees. You can make the trees bigger or smaller if you want to do something artistic and get crazy. That's what the size does. For the sake of it, I'm going to go ahead and click 3D, just so you guys can see it. I'm going to click OK and click render. Another thing I want to let you go, one of the things I should tell you guys while it's rendering, the tree density, while you can set that value to a higher number to get more trees, that tree density is married to the polygon setting down here. So the more detail you give the terrain, like a setting of 1, the maximum detail level, the more trees you're going to get. So if you set the tree density to like 100, but then set poly to 8, you'd be like, why aren't there as many trees as there was back when I had it set to 2 on polygon? It's because those 2 settings are related. So be careful of that. That could bite you. Like if you set your tree density super high at polygon level 8, you're like, oh, that's perfect. And then you drop down to 1, you could have billions and billions of trees and your Amiga will disappear into 4D space in time. And you'll have to call Ant-Man to come retrieve it. So what we've done now is turned on 3D trees. And as you can see, this is taking a lot longer. We have to get to 256, remember, as he sips again from his beverage. This is why I didn't do 3D trees originally, but you guys deserve it. You know, you guys are watching this. If you are watching it, you're still watching it. You want to see what 3D trees look like. Maybe you'll never even load this program after watching this video, but at least you want to see your 3D trees. So we're going to sit here and wait for those 3D trees. They're going to look amazing. Bob Ross would jump up and down. Come on, 256. Give me 256. I'm waiting for 256. 196 is not 256. I really wish I could hear what music was playing in the background. If I put on headphones, I could. I don't like headphones. Oh, by the way, this haze density button over here, that's fog. he casually says. So now we're drawing, and the glowy trees are no longer glowing. And actually, they kind of look more similar with 3D mode, but that's because now they're being shaded by the sun. At least they're no longer glowing. So if they're in the shadow, they're darker. If they're in the sun, they're brighter. Also, remember, I didn't turn leaves on. So these are basically trunks and branches. And in this program, branches apparently are green. And there's no leaves on them, or pine needles in this case. If you wanted to lower the camera and really get in there and then turn the tree details to their maximum, you can do that. And you can actually see some pretty cool looking trees with like little 3D polygon 90s era needles coming off them. And it's cool. It's something to play with. But guys, it really does take a long time to render. I got to warn you, this is a 68060 and it does take a long time to render. But I wanted to just let you know that's the basic overview tree. You turn it on, then you pick the tree line button, and you pick a level for the trees to show up. Now, if we want to go back in here, I didn't cover this, but you see this expert button. I'm going to go ahead and push this button, and well, I'll just leave it up to you guys. Yeah, that happens. That just scares me. This gives you finite control over every part of the tree, how much detail it has, and ironically, for the first time, we actually get proper shortcut names for the settings, L, M, H, U, so low, medium, high, ultra. So the trees that have been rendering this whole time, pine, have been at high, and the crown has been at high. You can get in here and get really granular with those settings and experiment. Have fun with that. I'm not going to show that here because it's really slow. So now we're going to go ahead and say turn the trees off. let's go to lens. I should cover lens. This is the camera lens, wide and zoom, kind of like a lightweight. So they have wide, and you can't really see it, unfortunately, because let me change my camera here. Let's put the camera more in the green. Okay, see this line coming off here? This is the camera's field of view. It's almost like 90 degrees. Actually, that is like 90 degrees. And if you look down here, what's it say? 90 degrees. If you click zoom, it becomes more of a wedge. And it says 52 degrees. This is, this is what your camera is looking at. This is the lens focal length. So now we're zoomed in. You don't have to just do wide and zoom. You can type in whatever you want. You can type in 35 millimeter if you want. There's a 35 millimeter zoom. So if you go to our little friend P here, you can see what you're seeing. Oh, it looks very pleasant. Light. This is the sun. And as you can see here, you get this sonar distance looking thing here. And there's like a weird miscolored line coming out. This one's a little tricky. You're going to right click and nothing happens. So you're going to left click, nothing happens. What you need to do, even though you've clicked light, and you're thinking, okay, let me adjust the light. What I just did is I adjusted the camera. I just moved the camera position over here. Let's go to P. Oh, yeah, camera moved. That's because when you click light and it shows you the fancy screen here, it's not active. You have to click custom, or you can type in values here, okay? So if you click custom, you come over here immediately without clicking any mouse buttons, you can control that weird line. And this is where the sun is. Your crosshair is the sun. So remember, our camera is this little black dot here. It's looking in this direction towards this dot. So if I put the sun here, and on this 0 ring, this is pretty much a sun set. If I go 30, 45 ring, 60 ring, 75 ring here, right in the middle, that's noon. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to put it behind the mountain and down here at like, I don't know, 15. Click. Oh, looks like it's 26. Okay. And then you can turn on shadow. So this way, when the sun's lighting up the shot, the polygons that aren't facing the sun will be darker than the ones that are facing the sun, which will hopefully make our landscape look even more, I don't know, realistic or pleasing to the eye. The exagger button, this makes the shadows longer, more apparent. I'm going to leave that off for now, and let's hit render. So now our light is coming from behind Mount St. Helens. And we also zoomed the camera lens in, and we turned the trees off. So you might be looking at this going, well, okay, I guess I'll take your word for it. Well, look at the snow. See how up here, the top of the snow is a bright white, and then on this side it's a darker gray and darker grays. That's this program's, representation of shadows and light. Remember, this is the mid to late 90s. Well, I'm sorry, I already the early to mid 90s. So that's what it's doing. What we can do is I can go back to lens and click wide and widen the camera up, and we'll do another render just to show you again, give you a little better overview of what's going on. Again, the light is behind the mountain, but don't expect anything modern and drastic with this. But it does do what it says it's doing. It is changing the position of the sun. So again, the sun is back there. If we were, to move the camera behind it, it might be a little brighter. See how this little area here is darker because it's in shadow? That's because the sun is back here, and and the light's hitting here. It's not the greatest lighting model, but it does work. I mean, this is dark down here. It definitely seems like it really requires massive deviations in terrain height for it to actually affect shadows like you're seeing here. Like, why isn't this dark? I mean, this is obviously a raised ridge. Okay, why isn't it dark on this side? Well, that's just how it is. But as you can see here, the areas here are darker because we moved the light behind the mountain. So again, remember what year this program came out in, and that's why it does what it does. So that covers the lens control and the lighting control. Those are probably the most common things you're going to do when playing with this. The C map button here, if you click it, this happens. You can adjust the color map that it's using, okay? And you can add sound effects. Isn't that great? Let's go ahead and quit that. Not going to mess with that. But one of the things you can do is you can lock the color map. And I believe that is in the graphics panel. Graphics panel. Show me lock color palette. Nope, not there. Well, there's definitely a way to lock the color palette, because you need to do that if you're doing anything less than 24-bit rendering, because the color palette will change per frame if you're doing an animation. Anim mode, VNM. Right, we're not going to get into animation. I'm sorry. This video is already too long, and animation is a whole other thing in this program. It does do it, but as I've told every single customer of mine back at my Amiga store, if you want to do terrain animation, you should use Scenery Animator. It is much more intuitive, easy to understand, and faster. VistaPro's animation is an afterthought. They made this amazing program to generate beautiful terrain. I didn't cover a ton of feature, roads, lakes, stars, buildings, all this stuff. There's so much more in here it can do. But its animation is very rudimentary. It's script-based. That's what this script is up here. You basically move the camera using these tools I showed you earlier, tell the script, okay, here's position 1. And then you move it again and tell the script, here's position 2. And you just keep doing that. And then you have to hope you gave it enough positions that when you play the animation, it wasn't too fast or too slow. It's insane. Like, Scenery Animator is just so much better when it comes to animating terrain fly-throughs. I appreciate what VistaPro has done in that. And in fact, I mean, I could go here and just let me show you something. I could go, well, let's open a script. And it comes with scripts for everything, so you can figure this out. So we have Mount St. Helens after it exploded, right? So let's load Mount St. Helens after it exploded script. Click OK. And now, after that script is loaded, let's say preview. After it exploded, preview. 2D or 3D preview? Well, we don't want to generate a 3D preview, do we? Because that's going to be a lot slower. Let's do a 2D preview. There, it generates it. There it goes. End of script. Okay. And what it did, and you probably saw it, or maybe you didn't, it actually showed you a little dashed path of what it was going to do here. Let's do that again. Let's preview the script, and this time I'm going to do the full 3D version. So let's do the 3D version, and watch it. It's going to come up here. There you go. Now you're seeing the wireframe 3D animation script that it's going to do. If you rendered this, this is what you would see. It's basically doing the P function at its lowest setting. Whoa, my goodness. And then when it gets through it, end of script. So that's the animation system. It's very clunky. It's not ideal. It is possible. I mean, you can definitely generate much better looking terrains in VistaPro than you can in Scenery Animator. But animating in VistaPro is just not a pleasant experience. I tend to tell folks, just use VistaPro like Bob Ross used his canvas. Make beautiful landscapes. Go in here, deep dive into all these settings, and you can generate some really cool stuff. If you really got the time, get into figuring out how to do the script. This little button here, it says add. That's basically where you tell it. Like, you go to camera position here. See, now what am I doing? I'm starting to tell you how to do this. And this I said I wasn't going to do. It's like, you put your camera here, and you go up to script and you say, add. And then you go here and you do, add. And it's like, you just do this and you keep, and you got to do create. I didn't do create, that's why it's not. It's a whole process. It's really clunky. You got to keep looking through the P button to make sure you're actually looking at something. Scenery Animator. Check out my Scenery Animator video. I already did. It's a much more fun program to animate in. With that, I really should end this video. You can go back and scrub through all my nonsense to try and figure out what I was trying to tell you guys. But that is the supreme basics of Vista Pro and how to do stuff with it. Again, I mentioned earlier, haze density. That's your fog. Do you want to add some atmospheric fog to your terrain to make it look larger and more distant? Just, you know, turn on, and then you can, if you click it, it does an automatic value. It basically looks at where your camera is and looks at where your target is, and it tries to generate automatic fog. You know, you can change it though. You can click the render button and then you can adjust it. And again, just the basics. Remember, we're back over here in main. 1 is the most detail. H high is the most detail for texture. Altitude texturing looks the coolest, but takes the longest. And you always want to have the BF cull, the blend, and the G shade on. And yeah, you can turn those clouds on and experiment with them and get cool clouds. And then yeah, you have the lights and you can control the sun angle with that. And then yeah, once you hit your render button, you can just save, the setting. You can save an IFF, an IFF24. You can actually save a 3D Turbo Silver file, which is probably loadable into programs like Imagine. You can save a raw RGB file. And of course, you can save all the settings. If you save an extended dem, that's basically the Vista Pro Ultimate Format version. So everything you've done in here gets saved. So if you use that, everything you've done in here will get saved, and you can load it up again later and play with it. So I hope, yeah, you can print too, by the way. Oh, one other question. So I loaded a dem file to start this all off, right? Right. So can you do your own thing though? Well, of course you can. You can go to Fractal and you can just click random. Boink, and it makes a random terrain. Look at that. Let's click it again. Doink, makes a random terrain. And again, the quality of that terrain, that's what all these settings are. You can fractalize it. It defaults to the highest quality of 1. You can add a lake, click lake. And then just like with the trees, click the level of the lake. Let's do here, the brown. Desired lake level, 444? Sure, we all love 444. Boink, now you have a lake. Accept the lake? Yes. So now you have a lake. Look at that. That's how easy that is. It's very similar to the trees. It's like setting a tree line with lake. But again, I'm getting into more features. This video is too long. That's Vista Pro, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, thank you for watching my madness, my unedited madness. Have a great night.